I think it's safe to say that we all value experiences here. We'd love to travel more, do more things with our loved ones, and just live life to the fullest. But our finances are always getting in the way. We have such great ideas of what we want to do, but when we look at our bank account, we're just barely keeping up with our normal expenses. Between our rent, our groceries, our car payments, and maybe even our student loan payments, that pretty much eats most of our paycheck. So how in tarnation are we going to find an extra $2,000 to travel the world? I used to be in this place, just barely keeping up with everything, and I felt like there was no way I could actually get ahead and start saving up for something cool. But then I made a simple change. I stopped buying three things, and those decisions completely transformed my relationship with money. Now, literally last month, my wife and I were able to do something really cool because of our newfound financial freedom. More on that later. But seriously, when I decided to stop buying these three things, it didn't feel like I was even restricting my life. It felt more like I was taking control of my life. I was choosing to give up what I want right now in order to have what I want most, and that is life experiences with the people that I care about. And if you don't know this about me, I like to do big things. I like to take incredible trips, I like to meet amazing people, and I like to create unique experiences that I can put into my life resume. But to do that, sometimes it requires you to give up these small experiences and sometimes the small trips. Cool transition. I know we all love a quick weekend getaway, but sometimes I feel like doing those will hold me back from actually taking the big trips that I've always wanted to go on. I remember when I first started working as an adult, one of the things that I realized I unlocked in life was the ability to just pay for a cheap plane ticket and go to any city in the country. I would go on Google Flights, pay for a Frontier or Spirit Airlines ticket, grab my backpack, and head to a different city for the weekend. But realistically, those quick and cheap weekend getaways could still cost me around $600. And I still see a lot of people around me doing the same thing. They'll work for weeks to save that extra 600 bucks and then spend it all on a short 2-day trip. And if I'm keeping it real with you guys, most people don't save for those trips. Most people will use a credit card because honestly, those weekend getaways are an impulse purchase.
Donatella, T-Mobile. Three words for you. Treat yourself.
So that is why I've chosen to give up weekend getaways in order to save up for bigger travel experiences. Last year, I was all about them. I went to LA, I went to Dallas, Texas, I went to Boston, and I probably had at least 6 of these small weekend getaways. But this year, when I started to say no to those mini trips, my wife and I have been able to take some of the biggest travel experiences slash vacations of our lifetime so far. For example, we went to Japan this year for a solid 10 days. We also went on this ski trip to Colorado with our friends, and this was the first time I've ever been snowboarding. And to cap it all off, we were able to rent this huge Airbnb and host our families for a few days, and all they had to do was buy the plane ticket out to North Carolina, and we took care of the rest. It was literally lakeside. It had all the fixins. It had kayaks, paddle boards, a huge game room, this big old living space, and also a pontoon boat for the day. So in my head, it was totally worth it to give up these impulse 2-day weekend trips in return for these very long, full, relaxed vacations. And I'm going to give you the link in the description to the place we stayed at on Lake Norman. We chilled hardcore, and it was just nice to have both of our families under one roof, cooking together, eating together, and sharing a ton of laughs. That's what I like to spend my money on. So if you guys want this exact Airbnb for your families or one similar to it, I'm going to drop a link to the Lake Norman family rentals right here in the description. And they're not paying me money to say this. Anyways, here's a screenshot of all their rates. I know you're going to be able to make room in your budget for this stay as long as you start saving on these next 2 things. In the past, I've made videos about a long list of items I stopped buying in order to save more money, but let's be real. If you want to see the biggest savings all at once, you have to make changes to the biggest expenses in your life. So first up is your housing costs. I make sure to cut out as much of our unnecessary housing costs as possible. My first way to do this was to actually evaluate the rent payment itself. Or if you're going to own a home, evaluate what the monthly mortgage is going to look like along with all your other monthly fixed expenses. When my wife and I were deciding on this apartment that we live in right now, we made sure not to go overboard. I wouldn't consider this place right now luxurious or even modern looking, but I'll tell you what, it's cozy. And for a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment, our rental costs, including our utilities, is still less than $2,000, which is still less than 25% of our household income. Hallelujah. Deciding to not rent a place that was fancy schmancy with crazy nice amenities that took up 50% of our income was a strategic move. One, we learned from our last apartment that we barely use the amenities anyways, no matter how nice they are. And two, we don't need a smart home with a bunch of fancy gadgets in this apartment. We barely use those gadgets anyways. So the biggest things we did consider when finding an apartment to rent was our budget, our needs, the safety of the area, and of course, the comfort of the home. We consciously decided that we'd rather be conservative with our housing so that we can spend more on experiences and the other goals we have. But saving on housing didn't just end there. We also continued to save on housing costs even after we moved in. We've done this by not dropping thousands of dollars on new furniture. It's easy to fall prey to the influence of Pinterest or Instagram when decorating your home, and thankfully, my wife and I keep each other accountable and we don't try to keep up with the trends or aesthetics that we see on the gram. Like, we just finally bought this brand new couch for our living room after 5 months of already living here. We took our time, saved up $200 a month into our new furniture fund, and then we dropped $1,000 on this couch on Black Friday. This was the total opposite of an impulse purchase, and if we treat our vacations like that too, I know you'll have a lot of money saved up to go on some pretty lit vacations. Now let's talk about another big expense that most people have: transportation. The biggest way we've saved on transportation was from our decision on how we would buy our car. Not when we would buy our car or even what type of car to buy, but just how we would purchase it. We decided that how we were gonna buy this car was gonna be 100% cash up front. We also decided that getting a car loan wasn't going to even be an option. And let me tell you, something happens when you decide to take debt off the table. It forces you to get creative, and it also forces you to be a better planner. Since I needed cash up front, I had to save for months prior to buying the car. It also forced me to do a lot more extensive research. Using online tools like Kelley Blue Book and checking websites like AutoTrader and Facebook Marketplace, I had enough information to know what was considered a good deal at the time of the purchase. I just got informed. Like, I didn't just walk into a dealership and say, hey, I want a new sedan with X miles on it, and then let the salesman do his routine. Okay, I went to multiple sources, visited multiple private sellers, and even visited a couple of dealerships to look at cars. And yes, you can complain all you want about how that would take hours and take a lot of my precious time, but why not? Why not inform yourself on the second biggest purchase of your life outside of your home? This is literally your hard-earned money we're talking about, and I don't want you to be losing $500 to $700 a month just to some lousy car payments for the next 72 months. So does this process take longer? Yes, but also we don't have a fat car payment lingering over us every month, eating away at our paycheck. Now it's us who gets to decide where to put an extra $500 to $700. And guess what? That extra money has been going towards our travel. And hold up, I'm not finished yet. You might not be in the market for a new car, but there is a way to save thousands of extra dollars when you already have an existing car. This one's pretty common sense, but most people don't put it into practice. Maintain your car regularly. Replace that oil, because the oil is the lifeblood of your car, and get that transmission fluid changed too when the time is right. Also, when that check engine light comes on, just go and get it checked right away. Most auto shops won't charge you anything for them to plug in their computer and find out what's going on with your car. And now that we've freed up a ton of your money by avoiding those 3 big old expenses, here comes the most important part. When you have a bunch of extra money lying around, you need to create a plan on how you're going to use it, especially if you do want to use it for travel. Personally, my wife and I always have an ongoing travel sinking fund. And what's a sinking fund, you might ask? No, it's not a sink full of money. It's a strategy to save up for your large expenses. It's where you set aside a small amount of money over time to build up for this big, large expense you have coming up. And for most people, it pretty much looks like an extra savings account with a specific purpose, such as holidays, car repairs, or travel. And doing this will help you avoid going into debt when those big expenses come, aka a 6-bedroom Airbnb rental. So here's a 5-step plan on how you can set up a sinking fund and start saving for dope experiences like inviting your whole family out to an Airbnb in North Carolina. 1. Identify the expense. Decide on what you're going to save for, whether it's Christmas gifts or a big vacation. 2. Set a total goal. This is where you decide on how much money you'll need to spend to make this experience happen. 3. Set a time frame. Figure out how long you're going to give yourself to save up for this experience. 4. Divide and save. Take the total cost of your trip and divide it by the remaining months you have left in order to get the amount you need to save monthly. And finally, step 5, set up automatic transfers. This one's optional, but we did this to make things simple. We set up an automatic transfer to move money from our checking account into our separate savings account. So now we didn't have to think about moving $150 into our travel fund every month. It just did it on its own. So I promise you guys, being frugal isn't about being cheap, and this channel isn't just about saving money. It's about intentionally spending on the things that add the most value to your life. And if that requires you to sacrifice some things that you want right now in order to have what you want most, then so be it. So if you really want to start living a more abundant life, it's going to take more than just saving on these 3 things. It's going to require you to make some changes to your daily financial habits. That's why in this video, I'm going to walk you through some of the minimalist habits that I've started living that have helped me save not only $10,000, but even $100,000 up to this point. Give it a click and I'll see you guys over there.